Hello there. Welcome to Make Your Pick. This is our second episode, focused entirely on black and white. Now, you guys had a lot of black and white pictures submitted. I really appreciate it, so without any further ado, let's get into it. Our first picture here, this one was submitted by Congruity. I actually met this fellow, not the guy in the picture, the guy who took the picture, Noah. This is a pretty interesting shot. Makes good use of perspective here. It is well suited to being in black and white. There's a lot of tones going on here, a nice sharp contrast between the notably dark subject and the more muted grays and light colors of the background against which he's placed. Overall, technically speaking, this is a pretty strong picture. I do have one thing that I have to say, however, and it's that I don't generally recommend shooting pictures on railroad tracks. The reason for this is twofold. First off, it's a bit of a hazard in case there's a train coming. There have actually been a number of photo shoot related fatalities when it comes to taking pictures on railroad tracks. And the second is that even if no train is coming, technically speaking, you are trespassing on the railroad company's tracks. They probably aren't going to sue you for it, but just to be on the safe side, for those two reasons, I really don't recommend shooting on railroad tracks. While they are aesthetically pleasing, they can be a hazard. Overall, though, very nice picture, Noah. Thank you. Our next picture is also from Noah of Congruity.business. This is a wedding picture. It's very good. If I had to make any sort of suggestion here, it would be a bit of cropping on the left, because I can just see like the edge of a chair. It's a bit of a distraction. Overall, though, this is a nice, strong shot. You don't usually see black and white wedding pictures like this, because you see that the bride's wearing her veil, and her face is largely in shadow. There's an element of mystery to this picture, and I feel like if the chair wasn't poking in and distracting, it'd be absolutely perfect. Overall, very strong shot, good candidate for being in black and white. Okay, we got one more picture from Noah. This one is another wedding picture. It appears to be a group of groomsmen all forming a circle above the photographer. This sort of picture is pretty fun to make. I actually did one for a wedding that I'd shot earlier in 2019. But the style of Noah's is pretty cool, because you see here the grooms are they're all together, right, in a circle. They formed another circle with their fists, and so you have that sort of a circle of light. There's a lot of nice shapes in this picture, basically, is what I'm trying to say. It's a very creative take on the groomsmen looking down huddle shot. Overall, I like it a lot. Our next picture is something pretty different. This one comes from Instagrammer M2K2NI. Thank you very much for that submission. It's a portrait here, more traditional, sort of like a senior portrait. It's a girl on a skateboard, just sitting down, chilling out. Overall, I like it. I feel like the black and white does work quite well here. I like that the background is a bit blown out, but not overwhelming. Again, the thing with black and white is that a lot of your strength for an image is either going to come from having a lot of contrast or a lack thereof. In this case, it seems to be a case of a lot of contrast. Overall, strong picture. Do I have any suggestions for this picture? None come immediately to mind. It is interesting here because I could be wrong, but it looks like this shot was taken in direct sunlight. And ordinarily speaking, direct sunlight does not work well for portraits. The reason is your subject's going to be squinting because they've been blinded by the sun, and the sun is going to form some pretty harsh shadows on their face. To demonstrate, actually, let me just move my diffuser here to show you what I'm talking about. Here I am tearing apart my set again. But you notice what's happening on my face now? This is what happens. Oh, I shouldn't look directly into it. But this is what happens when you shoot in direct sunlight. However, it would appear that M2K2NI managed to avoid this by turning the subject away from the sun, and instead having the sun sort of serve as a hair light. It's illuminating the side of our subject, but there's enough light on her face that we can make out her features, and she doesn't seem to be blinded here. So overall, very nice job. So our next shot comes from Stills That Speak. Now, Stills That Speak had a lot of pictures to submit for this episode. Thank you very much for those. He actually submitted quite a few in our last episode on color as well. So thanks for all these pictures. Keep them coming. So this first one is titled The Tyndall Effect. It would appear to be a canopy shot. That is to say, a picture that's looking up at some trees, pointed at their canopies, that is. I like this one. There's a nice perspective here, very contrasting. If you zoom in on some of these trees, they're almost black. Like, this is poking away from realism in the picture, and overall I like the effect. Next up is a shot by Madison.photo, again, a repeat submitter. Thank you again for this one. Now, this picture is not in black and white, so I'm going to have to make a couple little changes in post, since this is our black and white episode. But this is a shot that definitely lends itself to black and white. Right now I'm looking at it in color, whoops, but I'm imagining it black and white. It's got a nice amount of contrast to it. I almost feel like this one works better in color, in part because it's so minimal, but also because those few elements that make up the picture are so essential to letting you understand what's going on here. Overall, though, I like the shot. It's got a nice cool symmetry to it, and this is actually a really cool way to show off a product. So if you're considering some product photography for something like this, of this nature, consider this sort of shot. So very nice work, Madison.photo. Okay, so we got another one from Stills That Speak. The title of this image is Mirror. I'm not entirely sure of where this is. Let me, Stills says it's somewhere in India. Much like the other one from Stills That Speak, it's very contrasty. Those blacks are very black, and the bright areas are very bright. There is a bit of haze running through the middle of the image, though. It sort of softens everything up, so it has a sense of atmosphere to it. I like it. Okay, Stills That Speak is keeping it running. This one is titled Tangled. Perhaps if we have a botanist in the audience, you can let us know what sort of plant it is that we're looking at here. This one's interesting. It's more of a macro shot. Again, not entirely sure of what sort of plant we're looking at, or what part of a plant this is. On the whole, though, I like it. Something I like about this picture is that it's coming from Stills That Speak, and it's not quite as contrasty as his other black and white shots. This one, it's all about the gray and the gradients, basically. Like, it doesn't really have that sharp punch of, how can I put it? There's no sharp black to white, basically. There are some shadowy regions of the image, but for the most part, it's very soft. There's something sort of appealing about that, really. But I like that when you look at a picture like this, and then you look at the previous ones from the same submitter, what you realize is that when it comes to black and white pictures, you have a lot of options, basically, for tone, for mood, the way that you take a picture, the way that when you consider your lighting, basically, for black and white, it affects the whole thing in some big ways. So overall, very nice. Stills That Speak. Keep them coming. Okay, we're back to contrasty again. This shot coming from Christine Nora. The title on this image is Chasing the Moon. Okay, so this is a shot of a bridge somewhere in Moosup, Connecticut. I'm not 100% sure what went on with the processing on this image. Maybe her camera sensor wasn't quite ready for the dynamic range here, because if you look up at the sky, there's this nice, delicate cloud layer here that you can see. It's got texture to it, but then a bit lower down, you see the sun, and it just cuts right through these trees here. Like, it obliterates the branches. So I'm curious as to if this was the way the image was processed, or if it was just the camera. On the whole, interesting picture. I like the way that the lines of the bridge break things up a bit. I do wish those power lines weren't quite there on the left, because they feel like a bit of a distraction. On the whole, though, again, much like that earlier picture that we saw from Conspire, Much like that earlier picture that we saw from Congruity, nice perspective here. One of the things that I really like about bridges are their leading lines. So here we see on the sides of the image there are these lines that point out toward nothing in particular. But if you are looking for a substitute to railroad tracks, bridges, consider them. Overall, I like this picture a lot, Christina. The bridge itself does make for a nice subject. That said, if you were to place something at the end of a bridge, it would look pretty cool. So I want you to take a wild guess as to who our next picture is from. That's right, folks, it's still Zetspeak. Now, this one, it's a simple portrait just titled Questions. It seems to be a boy in front of an umbrella, sort of close up. I like the picture, although it does seem to be a bit blurred, as though he was turning his head while you took the picture. I do have mixed feelings on his portrait because, besides the blur, I do like it technically. Like, there's a nice bit of shadow on the side of his face. You can see a bit of light in his eyes, which honestly is always important. Like, part of the issue that I take with my current lighting setup is that I look completely dead behind the eyes if I don't let the light into my eyes, because I'm only using one light here. However, this seems to be almost candid outdoor portrait, and you got that eye light, which is important, so nice job. I feel like this picture's alright, but if you snapped a picture just a second after, with a quicker shutter speed, you would have had a stronger result. If this is a candid portrait that I'm looking at, in that case, congratulations, because those can be tricky. So yeah, Stills, if you could let me know what was going on with this picture, I'd appreciate it. We have one more from Stills That Speak for now. This one is titled Splits, and it's more of his night photography. Now, Stills That Speak, in our very first episode, submitted a whole bunch of night pictures, but they were like long exposures of car lights at night. This one is in black and white, and doesn't seem to be that long of an exposure, but it does capture like a nice row of lights heading down a lonely road someplace. It's got emotion. It's very film noir, yes. There's atmosphere to it. That's the term I'm looking for. There's a nice sense of atmosphere to this picture. I can almost hear the cars going by. There are some very creative leading lines in this picture, because it seems that the night might be a little bit foggy, so it almost looks like these street lights, which are placed one after the other, are connected because of the way that the shafts of light are formed. Thanks to what appears to be fog. It's a little detail, but it really makes the picture. If this were a clear night, I don't think the shot would be quite as compelling. So overall, very nice shot still, so to speak. Okay, so we have another shot from Images in My Head, who had submitted for our first episode, so thank you for this one. The title here, We Are All Broken, Just Trying to Hold Our Pieces Together. Okay, what I like about this immediately is that this is sort of abstract, because we can tell that we're looking at a real thing, but what that real thing is, I'm not 100% sure. Am I indoors or outdoors? Am I looking at a person on the other side of the glass? I don't think so. I think this might be a reflection. Is this a self-portrait of some sort? There's a lot going on here, and I feel like if this were in color, it might not work as well. In color, maybe I would have too many clues as to what's actually happening in the picture, and it would give away the mystery. Maybe if this were in color, all the broken pieces and such might be a bit distracting, but stripped down to black and white, I'm a little confused, in a good way. I'm not distracted. So this picture is really holding my gaze. Would this picture work better with a little more symmetry? That is to say, if the shattered part of the image were moved closer to the center? Perhaps. In my opinion, anyway. You always hear people complaining, hey, don't take perfectly symmetrical pictures. Sometimes that rule applies, sometimes not so much. On the whole, though, I really like this shot, so thank you for this one, Images in My Head. It's unique. But we have another one from Images in My Head. This one is titled, Sometimes the Most Beautiful Things Are the Ones Hardest to Look At. And I think the hashtags here give away what exactly is going on. Hashtag rear view, hashtag side of a road, flowers, homeless. From what I can tell, this seems to be a homeless person standing by the side of a road. holding some flowers. What exactly is going on? Why they're holding flowers here, I don't know. But I do like the contrast, because this person is basically just a shadow in this image. You can't really tell who they are, or what they're doing, or the mystery of why they're carrying flowers. It's an extremely moody shot. It's not 100% technically on point. It feels a little bleary. Like, it reminds me of early street photography, but in a good way. So while the image does have some technical issues, I kind of feel like those contribute to the whole atmosphere or vibe of the picture. It feels like found art, in a way. Very good. So thank you for submitting this one, Images in My Head. That, again, much like your previous shot, both of these pictures were surprising, creative, and they did a great job of capturing my attention. Our next shot is another one from Madison.photo. This one is titled A Clock in a Tower. Now this one, very contrasty, I like it. It does seem to be slightly tilted at an angle. That said, overall I like the shot. I do feel that this person on the right sorta intersects with this person in the middle. Like their silhouettes aren't quite so cleanly defined. And for a shot like this, I do feel like if they were just a little more separate, it would be a stronger picture overall. That said, this is a very cool location, and I kind of want to know where it is now, because I want to steal this for a shoot sometime. But yeah, overall, I like it. Thank you very much, Madison.photo. Our next one. Now this one comes from Black Sheep Photos. This is a macro shot. I really like this shot's sense of symmetry. Now, I know what I'm looking at here, it being, the end of a pine cone. That said, this shot does almost lean a little bit abstract. If you hadn't seen a pine cone before and weren't 100% sure of what it was, you might be curious what's going on in this shot. Yes, it does look like an organic structure, but zoomed in this close, there's something kind of curious about it. Now, I really like this picture. I would love to see more pictures in a sequence like this. Like more shots in this style of similar subjects. So very nice work at Black Sheep Photos. I really hope you make more like this, because this is really cool. We have another from Christine Nora. And I see a couple little eyes here. Yeah, that's Meeps the cat. Very cute. Looks like her kitty is perhaps hiding in some curtains somewhere, waiting. Overall, a very cute shot. There does seem to be a bit of vignetting around the edges of the shot. I'm not sure if that's intentional or not, because it does do a good job of drawing our attention to the cat. That said, if the vignetting weren't here, the cat might actually seem a little bit more... How can I put this? The cat might seem a little bit more camouflaged, which would make this more of one of those images that you gotta look back at twice before you see exactly what the subject is. So I do feel like maybe a little more element of mystery would work here, since it seems as though the cat's hiding. That said though, very cute. Nice to see Meeps doing good. Okay, ooh. This one is something special. Our next pick comes from Caleb Domonique Photography. The title of this picture is Generations. Wow. Okay, so there's two things I like about this immediately. First off is just the contrast. If you zoom in a bit, you notice that, yes, of course, there's the two different skin textures with the baby, texture of the baby's skin with the great-grandmother's, but also there seems to be a bit of a color difference and light difference. Like, even though it's a black and white picture, you can kind of tell that the light seems to be kind of more harshly bouncing off. Like, basically, because this picture's in black and white, you get a good sense for the textures that are at play here. So besides being a stunning picture, besides being such a thematically strong picture, it seems as though that picture technically supports what it's saying artistically, if that makes sense. Like, yes, there's a contrast of young and old, but there's also the contrast in textures and the contrast in light. Overall, this one is excellent. One of my favorites of the show so far. And what also makes it really neat is that this was shot on a cell phone. So you don't necessarily need fancy gear to make great pictures. Yes, having good gear helps. But if you have a strong concept, and if you know how to use your equipment well, as Caleb Dominique Photography apparently does, you can make some good stuff. Our next one comes from Photography with AM, who submitted stuff for our last episode, so thanks again for returning. This one, just a chicken. Just a chicken. I like it. It's a pretty simple, straightforward portrait of an animal. If I had any suggestions, it might actually be to isolate the chicken just a little bit more, because while the background is nicely blown out, it looks like there's another chicken behind her. I'm not entirely sure, and unfortunately that other chicken is just a little bit distracting. I could be completely, horribly, terribly wrong, and that might not be another chicken, but from the looks of things, it seems to be. So isolate your subject just a little more. Overall though, you got nice lighting on the chicken, you got a good catch light in the eye. Nice work here. So this is our first submission from Dwiki Paulia Fakri. Now please forgive me if I didn't pronounce your name correctly, it's a bit different from the names I'm used to seeing, but I like this picture a lot. Now I can't quite read I'm going to translate the caption here, so there might be some translation error, so forgive me here. But the translation says, "There's something I don't know, and there's something I don't want to know." It's a very moody shot. Wow. Like, this whole thing just has a film noir vibe to it. I'm not entirely sure of how they pulled off that floating hand effect. Zooming in, it looks like the edge of like a dark shirt. Dark shirt placed against a dark background with just enough light to illuminate the hand and a bit of the subject's face. So this is a picture that was made with skill and intent. I like this shot a lot. What's going on here? I don't know. There is such a sense of mystery about this picture. It feels like it fell right out of a film noir movie. Overall, I love it. So thank you very much for this first submission. I hope we see more of your work in the future, because this is really cool. Our next shot comes from MTD1616. Title, Ice Built Up on the Remains of a Jetty in Hampton Bays, New York. Okay, so I like this shot overall. I like the contrast between the very soft lines of clouds in the skies and the harsh and jagged lines of the remains of the jetty stabbing up at it. They look like really messed up teeth. I like it. I also like the sort of slippery, smooth look of the ice in the foreground. If there were one thing I would change, it would actually be the aspect ratio of this image. Because I feel like this image would either be stronger if it were stretched long, or if it were sort of tall. It's a square image that I'm looking at here on Instagram. It's not a bad picture. I feel like if it were, again, either horizontally focused or vertically focused, overall the image would have a better sense of direction. Because looking at it square, it kind of feels like my eyes are darting around, not 100% sure where to look. Not a bad picture at all, and thank you very much for submission. But that would be my suggestion. Overall though, that is a very cool place. I would love to take pictures there someday. So thank you for your submission, MTD1616. Okay, so our next shot comes from Stills in Actions. Got you there. Not Stills That Speak. No, Stills in Actions is actually the wife of Stills That Speak, so thank you very much for your picture. Let's see here, this one. I appreciate the simplicity of this picture, because this isn't too complicated of a shot to take. The overall execution of it works pretty well, because on the left side you see what looks like somebody's boot print or shoe print, and then on the right is just a plain foot. It feels like there's a story to this picture, even though it's so very simple. So I like that a lot, so thank you for this first submission, Stills in Actions. If I had any suggestions, it would just be to crop out that little dark spot on the left side of the picture. I'm not sure if that's just the edge of another footprint or something. But I do feel like if that wasn't there, the image would be just a little bit tighter. Overall though, solid concept for the image. And again, this is another good example of softer black and white photography. It's not very sharp and contrasty. The contrast here comes from the subject matter more so than the light and dark. But on the whole, I like it a lot. Our next picture, first time submission from lsdf.studio. The title of this picture is We Free. So looking at the data here, this was at Alki Beach in Seattle, Washington. And oh, this is interesting. This picture was shot on a Mamiya Sakura 1000 DTL on Kodak T-Max film. Our show gets a lot of digital images submitted, which is super cool, but I suppose every so often we're going to get a film shot, and this is one of them. The title of this picture is We Free. On the whole, I do like this picture. It's an interesting sort of juxtaposition, really. I guess the We Free in the title refers to the photographer who's not seen, as well as to this other photographer in the picture, and the fellow he's showing the photo to. But no, in a way, this picture represents sort of crossroads, really, that we're at with photography. Because this guy is showing another guy a picture. That's obviously a digital picture on the back of his camera. But the image itself that we're looking at here is a film image. It's a funny sort of crossover there, isn't it? There's a sort of thematic contrast going on there. Overall, thank you very much for submitting this picture. I hope you keep submitting them. I can't wait to see more of your work. It's nice to see some film shots coming in. Okay, so we've got another shot from Stills That Speak. He's got a lot of pictures. This one, a couple of light bulbs in cages. So this has more of an abstract mood to it, I suppose. Because, again, I know what I'm looking at, but what's really going on here? This feels like sort of found art. There's an interesting symmetry going on here. A symmetry that is abruptly halted by this square of black behind the second light bulb. Like, I feel like the image is incomplete in a good way. That makes me want more. Like, I'm like, okay, there's that first light bulb cage thing, apparatus, you know what I'm talking about. There's a second, and then it feels like wherever there should be a third, it's missing. The shot has a little bit of a sense of mystery to it, which I like. So thank you for this shot, Stills That Speak. Okay, so we have a shot now from a new submitter, Artsy Brothers. So this is a pretty straightforward shot, looking down a street someplace. There's a fellow there on the right. Might be a bit of a stronger shot if we had a better idea of what the subject was, because yeah, there's the guy on the right, but he just seems like he's off in the corner. I do like the tones in the image, overall. Like, if you wanted to show off all the different textures in this neighborhood, this is a good shot for doing it. That said, I'm not 100% sure of where my eyes are meant to rest in the image, so that is my one criticism for this shot. Overall, though, it's an interesting one, so thank you. We got another one from Artsy Brothers. I like this one a bit better, because it makes a good use of leading lines here. Where are the lines leading? No main subject here. I like that this pole here sort of interrupts the image. It takes what would be a straightforward image and it throws you a bit of a curveball. Artsy Brothers, that's a good name for your account, for sure. Okay, so now we have a third from Artsy Brothers. This one, I feel like this one is their strongest thus far. Again, we have a nice leading line in the form of what appears to be a stream through the middle of the woods. And it's interesting is that the leading line terminates a bit before the subject, which, as far as I can tell, is this house. Overall, I like this image a lot because it has all these busy, distracting elements of the woods, which have these awkward splotches of contrast, but then, cutting right through that boom, there's a stream, and then it vanishes a while before it reaches the house. This is a composition that I myself might have missed if I were out shooting. So Artsy Brothers, I want you to, if whether you're one brother using the name of brothers, or multiple brothers, again, I don't know which brother shot this, but on the whole, I like it a lot. So keep them coming, Artsy Brothers. Okay, so we have another shot from MTD1616. This one, looking down the street on a rainy winter night. Okay, so I really do like the atmosphere in this picture. Again, this seems to be a shot that's very much about mood. It seems like there are two subjects here. This tree with its sharp shadow down and the stop sign I'll be honest, MTD1616, I have kind of mixed feelings about this shot. Because on the one hand, I really do like the atmosphere here, but on the other hand, the picture does have a couple little technical issues. For starters, it does seem to have a bit of an issue with resolution. I'm not sure if this is an artifact of having to shoot in such dark conditions, or if you had digitally zoomed in on the picture, either while you were shooting it, or if you cropped in post. But I do feel like if it had a bit more resolution, it might be a bit stronger. The other thing regarding this image that I feel could be stronger is its composition. Looking here at the stop sign, for instance, it draws my eye, but then my eye kind of darts over to this dark shadow of a tree. And the thing is, these are both strong elements in your shot, but they kind of seem like they're competing with each other. If you were to focus in on one or the other, on the whole I feel like the shot would be stronger. That said, I really like the atmosphere in this picture, and I would like to see more in a series like this. So nice work, MTD1616. Our next picture comes from Ollie Hill Photography. First time submission, so thank you. This one is a more traditional portrait. The first thing that stands out to me about this picture is the way that the light catches your model's eyes. Do I feel like this picture needs to be in black and white? Not necessarily. I feel like perhaps this shot could work well in color, but then again, I'm not sure what's in the background, so I could be wrong. How do I feel about the picture in black and white? It's working, for sure. The thing about black and white is that it tends to simplify. And in this case, the simple is good. I like that your background isn't too busy, although it does feel a little bit distracted with these elements on the right here. Are those plant leaves or something peeking in? This is, if you were to crop, however, you would be losing those leading lines that point at your model's face, so I'm not 100% sure of what to tell you here. I feel like perhaps if you were to rotate a bit while you took the picture, changing your perspective, it might have been stronger. Overall, though, I really love your model's expression, and the overall mood of the picture feels really strong. So thank you for your submission, Ollie Hill. I like your picture. Our final picture for today's episode comes from Megan Van Photography. This is a pretty simple picture. It's from a perspective I might not have been thinking about. It looks like a row of stones, perhaps separating a garden from a walkway. I could be wrong. Overall, I like it. If I had any suggestions, it would actually be to get a little bit lower with this picture. Like, I like where you are now, but getting even lower would sort of exaggerate this picture's strengths. That is to say, there'd be more of a focus on that single leading line that runs right through your picture. Would I recommend making the picture totally symmetrical or not? That one's up to you. But the other thing too is if you were to get a bit closer, you would eliminate some of the more distracting elements on the side. Like this unkempt grass here. I like it because it contributes to the mood of the picture, but at the same time it feels a little distracting just because of your perspective here. So getting a bit lower, if at all possible, would help a picture like this for future reference. That said, I like this picture because it's a little unusual. It's not the sort of thing I might be thinking of when I'm out and about and looking for someplace to shoot. So, very creative Megan Van Photography. Thank you for this submission. So thank you to everybody who submitted a picture for this second episode of Make Your Pick. Now comes the exciting part, where I figure out a theme for the next episode because I should have been spending the entire month thinking about what the next episode's theme is going to be, and considering that we just did color and this episode was black and white, I think our next episode should be all about lights. So for the next episode of Make Your Pick, I want to see your photographs that focus on light. You could be taking pictures of lights directly, you could be taking pictures of lights bouncing off people's faces or your subject, you could be taking pictures that use very little light to tell a story. The point is, the focus is light, that's what I'm going to be talking about. If you would like to submit your pictures for the next episode of Make Your Pick, you can use the hashtag MakeYourPickChallenge on Instagram. So use that tag and be sure to follow and tag @thephotochan with 2 N's so that we wind up getting your picture. If you're not big on social media, you can also send an email to officialphotochannel@gmail.com. It's a mouthful, I know. and mention in the subject line that you're sending pictures for the next episode of Make Your Pick. Now, some folks have wondered, is there a limit as to how many pictures I can send in for Make Your Pick? The answer is no. You can send in as many as you want at current, within reason. Like, don't send me 500 pictures because I'm never going to get around to seeing all of them. Now, I might not show every picture on the episode. I'll probably wind up just picking out your best shots to talk about. That said, send as many as you want. I really appreciate seeing all of your work. That's it for this episode of Make Your Pick. Thanks for tuning in, and be sure to stick with the Photo Channel.